Hello, 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 and a welcome. Today I am here with Josette, and we are talking all about how to be your own soulmate. This just sounds amazing to me. I'm so excited to jump into this conversation. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at her talk show. If you have not subscribed, ladies, what are you waiting for? These podcasts are guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life and business. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Hello, if you're listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love in the comments later on. We have had over 600 women grace this stage. We are adding another one to the list today. Have you found yourself held back by your stories? I think we all have. In midlife, you are uniquely positioned to become the woman you have always wanted to be. Josette Diaz is here today. She is a self-awareness coach for midlife women. Women discover their heart's calling and become their truest selves as Josette leads them on the path of their soul-driven dreams in her system, Seasons of the Soul. Welcome, lady.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Sabrina.
Yes, we need to almost like create some sort of a drum roll or something. these guests that are bringing these amazing topics to us. So thank you so much for being here. I've never heard of this. Be your own soulmate.
Yeah. I mean, the thought of that, how does that feel when you hear it? It just sort of...
I freaking love it.
Right.
It took me a second when I read it. I was like, wait, what is she telling me to do? What is this woman telling me to do? And then I really sat on it. I was like, oh, that is good.
Yeah. It feels good, right? It feels good when you say it, when you hear it, because I think we so often, women, we get into this position in midlife where we start to recognize how we've prioritized ourselves. And it doesn't usually match up with what we thought we were going to have, what we thought we were going to do. Somewhere along the way, we start noticing it. And I mean, midlife, technically, the marker is at 40. And some women experience it even sooner than that. And in our 20s, no one's told us how to really be an adult. It's like you turn 18 and you're off on your own. You're legally responsible for yourself. And so we kind of gather identities up in our 20s, and we start looking at, I see myself having this career. I, get out of college, or you went right into a career. And so you have this idea, this perception of what that looks like. You don't know how to do it. So you kind of step into what you think it's supposed to be. And this is how we create our adulthood, is by stepping into these variety of identities that we have set up for ourselves. We predestined ourselves to. And then in our 30s, we're pretty comfortable with what we set up, and, we move further. Then we get into midlife and we kind of go, wait a minute, did I really intend that? Is that what I intended? And you further enter into midlife, and you really start to see how you didn't really, where you prioritized yourself and where the gaps are and what that looks like for yourself. And so this is how we come to be our own soulmate, because it's really deeper than self-care, it's deeper than what we like to say self-love is, because it's about recognizing the identities that we put on and stepped into, where the habits and patterns that we've created from being that woman that really might not line up with what we value, what we truly believe, and what we want. And this is how we've started to water down our dreams. So
Wow.
being your own soulmate is more than just loving you and prioritizing yourself. It's all part of it and very important because it helps guide you through the dreams that you have watered down and sometimes lost, or maybe never really quite ignited because you didn't feel you had permission to do so.
Yeah, I really like how you're putting this watered down your dreams, because that
Yeah.
is what happens.
Right? Right?
Yeah. The way we grew up, society, culture, your
Mhm.
neighborhood, your
Yeah.
school, all kind of dictates it. So how
Yeah.
does somebody courageously, because that would take
Mm.
some courage,
Right?
start to step in and be their own soulmate? Like, how do you even go about doing that?
Duh. That's such a good question because, we're not gonna sit around and go, "Oh gosh, let me jump into that." Most people don't really want to, engage that level of discomfort. It's not comfortable. And so, what I've created in my system, Seasons of the Soul, is I have a 3-month program of Be Your Own Soulmate to teach you how to enter into that. And it is using also creative processes so that it's not you taking this like total deep dive into the deep end that feels really scary. So, using the creative process I have found for myself and for my clients as well is that it it opens up a different kind of conversation with your soul. It allows you to really be in touch with yourself on a deep level without trying, without pushing, without it being a scary conversation with yourself. You're actually just opening it up and saying, "Oh, this is the communication that my spirit wants me to know. My soul wants me to know right now." And when you can have that depth of a conversation with yourself, it inspires you to slow down
Mm,
because slowing down's not about, like, not doing anything. It's slowing down enough to hear your voice inside.
mm.
And so that's why the creative process is really important to me and important in my system that I've created because it allows you to enter into that process without it being a scary, jump off the cliff kind of thing. Because no
Yeah.
one wants to really do that.
100%. I would love for you to talk a little bit. I feel like we have a ton of people watching live, by the way. So thank you so much for being here and for hanging out with us. Um, I know you talk a lot about stories,
Mhm.
the stories that we have of ourselves
Yeah.
and what it means, what our story means, and why we are where we are because of our stories.
Mhm.
And I
Right.
know that your coaching or with your clients, you talk a
Mhm.
lot about, figuring out what those stories are and which stories are holding you back.
Yeah.
Before we dive into that, though, I'd like to
Mhm.
just take one step back. What is a story?
Mm. Do you mean in the general sense of what a story is?
Yeah, like, what do you mean I'm living in my story? Like, what do you mean my
Okay.
story is holding me back? What does this
Yeah.
even mean?
Well, I'll use myself as an example because it's an easy
Okay,
go-to.
love
So,
it.
when I was growing up, my parents were both really young, and my mother had wanted to be a graphic designer, and so in my family, she was the artist. So, I knew from a very young age, just coloring with her on the floor, that art was not for me. That was her thing. And so it nothing she said, just that was the sense that I had around my mother that it wasn't supposed to be for me. So I always thought, I'm not creative. I'm not an artist. So my whole life I, went through feeling like, "Oh, I can't touch that. I'm not good at that." And it was a lie I told myself because I made assumptions about, responses and energy that I got from the time that I was young. And so I made up this story in my own mind that, maybe my mom wasn't saying that at all, yet it's what I interpreted it as. And so I stopped myself from being creative. And as I became an adult, I started dabbling into creativity and started to recognize, okay, I'm not an illustrator. Yet I'm good at creativity. I'm good at color. I'm good at putting things together. I'm good at, all these other varieties of the creative process. And so I found my own inner muse to experience the arts. And that has brought me into bringing it into my work because I found it so valuable and I was able to combine it with something else. And so that is a story that if I didn't allow myself to be open to be aware of what kind of story I told myself about not feeling good enough, then, and that's just one story. That's one storyline that I adopted into my adult life and had to overcome and, rediscover. So that's what I mean when I talk about how our stories hold us back, because it's a copulation of, assumptions and perceptions and what we believe, and none of it can be true.
Wow.
It's just what we made up.
Wow. I love that you kind of picked a mid story, because this can go really, really deep.
Yeah.
And this can also go a little more on the shallow side.
True.
While you were talking, it actually reminded me of a shallow, like a small story, even smaller,
Mhm.
of two things. One with my mom. So my mom, whenever we would get chicken wings,
Yeah.
there's the drumstick of the chicken wing, and then there's like the
Mhm.
wing of the wing. So like flats, my mom would call them the flats, and then the drumstick.
Yeah.
And my mom always ate the flats. Always. She always got first dibs and her whole plate was flats. And we would always eat the drumsticks and leave her a couple flats for if she wanted seconds. And then whatever she didn't eat, then we could like eat.
Mhm.
After I left the house, I still never ate the flats because I was so used to my mom always getting the flats and I got the drumsticks. And it wasn't until I was like a decade and a half out of my parents' house, I'm like in my 30s,
Yeah.
where I had this premonition of like, oh my gosh, I can eat the flats now. I don't even need the drumsticks. And now you can ask my fiance. Now I only eat the flats. He has to
That's
eat all the
funny.
drumsticks. And then
Don't
another
touch
story with my
those.
dad.
Yeah.
So my dad would always order Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal, and that was his cereal. No one can eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And then again, same exact thing. All grow, in my adult life, never, not that I eat sugar cereal very often, but every once in a while,
Yeah.
never ever bought Cinnamon Toast Crunch until again, I had an epiphany of like, I can eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And now it's like my go-to, like whenever I get a sugary cereal, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is like my go-to sugar cereal. But it holds you back,
Yeah.
right? In
Right.
so big areas and
Yes.
little small areas, like the type of cereal you eat.
It's so true, and it's just a
Wow.
representation of other things that you probably do along those lines from
Wow.
other messages you interpreted.
Yeah. Wow. How you be, how
Yeah.
you're mothering, how you're showing up at work, how you're
Yes.
dressing.
How you
Yeah.
respond,
Wow.
everything. So when you
Wow.
start to really look at, like, that's why I think it's so important to kind of take that step and go back into your history a little bit, not to live there, only to recognize where it is that you adopted certain identities that you are living in. And we've all had the experience where we've done something and then we kind of reflect back for a moment. We go, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? We've all had that. And usually it's because we've been on, automatic. We get so busy with everything around us. And we're so used to, falling back on these identities that it doesn't even occur to us. It's just sort of second nature. And so
Yeah.
we start, responding and making decisions from there. And we're not really being discerning about what we truly would want, love, deserve. And we just do. And then we're like, wow, why did I make that decision?
Mm,
This is totally opposite from what I say I want. Because we
mm,
say a lot of things. We say a lot of things throughout our day. And, we think that we want certain things, and then we haven't really taken the time to get discerning about what that truly means and how did we arrive at that.
mm. Yeah, and bringing your word to back up to the forefront here as far as being your own soulmate,
Mhm.
I'm totally even more kind of realizing what that means. Like when you think of your soulmate,
Yeah.
it's like really aligned very
Mhm.
well with like who you are
Yeah.
authentically.
Yes.
So how
Right.
does somebody do this? How does somebody like I'm just imagining like you sitting down with a client
Mm.
and they're laying out this story for you and
Yeah.
how it's not aligned and they want to be doing something different. What's the question? Are you asking why or how or what? What
So
is the question that our listeners can start to ask themselves?
yeah, that's a really good question because it takes the willingness to first you want to be willing to open up and be honest with yourself. This is really all about you. So when you start to look at what you've stepped into, then you're being honest about who it is I show up as. Do I love that? That's the first question. Look around and ask yourself, do I love that? Do I love being this kind of perfect mom? Maybe that's the identity you took on. You wanted to be the
Wow.
best mom ever. And sometimes it's being the boss babe. You know, a lot of women kind of adopt a very male perspective of how to achieve. And we forget that there's another side to us. And so do
Mm,
you love that? Do you love being the supportive, loving wife and feeling like you're last? Because that can be
mm,
a tendency. Doesn't mean it always is. It just can be. Same with being a loyal daughter. Those are titles that we adopt, and they just by the title themselves indicates that you probably do not prioritize yourself
mm,
because other people become more important. And then here's the other question. If I were to look at what I believe a soulmate is, am I that to me? Do I give that to myself?
wow.
Unconditional love, loyalty, because we dishonor ourselves day in and day out by the way that we respond and how we choose. And every time we water down our dream or we put ourselves last is a micro moment of abandonment, self-abandonment.
Wow.
And that starts stacking. That stacks evidence that that's what you're worth, right?
Mm,
Because that's how we filter the world. When we have evidence that shows us, okay, I'm successful, I'm making the money that I want. That's stacking evidence to say, I'm doing what I intended to. Now, we're not talking about how, we're not even going there. We're just talking about, what it looks like to me out here is what I think I process internally as to be true. So if you start asking yourself, am I the kind of soulmate that I want? And
mm.
can I give that to me? That can be just that small little question can turn things around in your perception and start opening up a whole new doorway for you to look at your life completely different.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just feels so good. It feels so warm and fuzzy when I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Because you know what you want in someone else.
Yeah,
So being that for yourself is number one. It's
yeah,
number one.
yeah. So good. And I just really love the word usage in that. I just think that it's so great. Um we've talked a lot about external,
Mm-hmm.
and soulmate is also internal.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate self-talk or negative self-talk as our own soulmates?
It's important to start to look at how you respond to things. So, being an observer of your own mind is something that you can practice. It's noticing, it's actually taking that step back and starting to notice what you're noticing about yourself. Like, if this is an important avenue for you to take and you are really wanting to um, notice that when you stop yourself, how you self sabotage. So if I'm looking at how am I self sabotaging? So I feel like I have a good example that I actually just started to do earlier today for myself. I saw myself having a stream of thought around fear came in around needing to move because I'm going to need to move soon. So I had this moment of fear, and then I went, hold on, because that fear coming in is my mind saying, oh, my nervous system got a little, heightened. And so my mind comes in and says, oh, I'm scared. You better back off. Maybe you need to do this. Maybe you need to do that. And so I had to slow it down and remind myself that the fear is just of the unknown and
Mhm.
doesn't mean anything unless I want it to mean something. And so I let it go. And then I could see clearly that that is how we keep ourselves small,
Mm.
because we allow these urgent thoughts, or we start to feel it in our body, and then our mind takes over and starts to protect us, because that's how it works. You have a sensation, you're reminded of something, and then you have feelings about that. Those feelings rise, and then your mind comes in to protect you, and your mind is meant to keep you right where you are. That's safety.
Mm.
So if you start to notice, how do you react to things that kind of scare you, things that feel a little bit unnervy because you don't know how the outcome is going to be. What are the consequences of that? And so when those types of things, that's a good way to kind of gauge this, to see what your behavior is. What is it that you're thinking about? What comes in and um, wants to protect you? So it's not fighting with yourself. It's understanding how you have operated within yourself, and how your mind comes in and protects you by the certain types of what we consider negative self-talk. And if we can make friends with it and recognize that it's not negative, it's actually meant to keep me safe, to love me in this, maybe it sounds a little weird, yet it is actually a self-preservation, that our whole system just automatically takes on, because the whole world is devised of systems. So you have a system, and your system, when you recognize how um, the negative talk comes in, and I'm qualifying it as negative because that's how we see it, then you're able to recognize how you can tap into your own system and then shift it and reframe it. So it's just like how I calmed myself down. I said, okay, the fear is really just about because I don't know what's going to happen. And so I really don't need to be afraid of that because I know I have my own back.
Mm.
And so then I can let that fear start to calm down. Maybe I need to breathe. Breathe in 4, hold 4, let go 4. That's always an easy one to do, and it's easy to remember. And once you calm your nervous system down, then you can actually start discerning. And then you can tap into that reserve of your own rhythm that sits within you the whole time. And that's when you can start relying on the safety of your heart rather than the safety of your mind.
It's good. Totally agree with you. When you think about life,
Mhm.
what would you say? Obviously you've been through a journey, ups and downs,
Yeah.
your personal growth journey, your healing journey. At this point, what would you say is the number one lesson that you've learned about life?
Mm. I think the biggest thing that stands out when you ask that question is the things that you dream of, that you hold kind of deep inside of yourself. You might not even acknowledge it to yourself because I hear women say, I don't even know what I want. Yet I believe they do know what they want. It's just covered in layers. And once you
Mm.
start to release those layers and you recognize what you want, nothing that is meant for you is going to pass you by.
Ooh.
And if you choose to not allow it to surface, then life sometimes will step in for you. And that's
Ooh,
when
wait, what does
what's that?
that mean? Wait, what does that
So
mean?
so life can step in for you, and that can look like everything's falling apart
Oh, okay.
when it's really falling together. It's really
Ooh.
it's falling apart to come together for you. Michael B. Beckwith says, and I love this quote, I say it constantly, is pain pushes until the vision pulls. So sometimes when we are experiencing the pain is the next layer to get to the vision pulling you.
That is so crazy because I say the same thing, but not that eloquently. I've never I've never heard anyone say that before.
It's a great
Um,
quote.
yeah, I always sort of mock, um, certain coaches who say to always stay in a state of, like, pull versus push,
Mm,
because I feel like I've gotten to where I am because of both.
mm,
I don't think I could have gotten to where I am, nor do I believe that I can get to where I wanna be with just the vision. Because every once in a while, the vision gets scary.
yeah,
I get fearful. It gets blurry.
right.
I'm uncertain. So when that starts to happen, my vision starts to get blurry. I don't wanna just stay still. So at that point, I reignite the push of the pain from my
Mm,
past to
mhm.
keep me moving forward, until that vision refocuses. Um, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not saying that that's the way to do it. Obviously, he
Well,
does both here. He starts with the push and ends with the pull. And maybe that's where I'm at in my journey. Maybe I'm right at the middle point where I'm starting to go more towards the pull. Um, but I think the pain has some use
I
in
think that
our
it
success.
Yes, I see the pain as being your growing edge. Like when you
Mm,
said that you kind of conjure up the past to push,
yeah.
that is the growing edge. So
Okay.
whatever that is for you, you can take a moment to examine that because you don't have to use it as a tool to push yourself into the into the future. You can recognize those elements and then actually sit in that uncomfortableness of the vision being blurry, because that blurriness might be an adjustment. It just might be that the vision is saying, there's something more here. And yes, it's scary. And that is a good thing. It
Oh.
being scary, it means that it's big enough.
Mm,
And it gets scary because we don't know how to do it.
yeah. And I think that is for so many people.
Oh, yeah. It's
You
part
know,
of the
like you're
process.
talking about moving.
Mhm.
Everybody gets a little like, you don't know where you're going. Will
Right.
you like
What
it?
I'm gonna
Will you
do?
like the
Yeah.
people? Will you like the neighbors? Like,
Yeah.
all your stuff? Like, it's
Right.
a lot.
Mhm. It is. 10 years
Yeah,
of, like, cleaning out things, like, it can feel overwhelming, right? It's like all the things that we have to do to, like, fulfill that big dream that's sitting up there that you're meant to do, and you just keep on believing that and knowing that it's yours. And, I think that it's so we all have the moments of, you know, I like to use the entrepreneurial journey because it's such a scary journey sometimes. We're doing this and we don't always know it's going to work. We don't.
yeah,
And so, it's one thing. It's like you have to do a lot of inner work in order to be an entrepreneur.
yeah.
And so I think it's such a great comparison to your own personal inner journey as well, because you're doing it as you go along. And so sometimes it looks blurry and scary. And my best advice is to sit in that because
Mm,
it's wanting you to know something else. So what's it wanting you to know?
mm.
I mean, it
Something to
never feels
think
great,
on.
but yeah.
Something to think on. Yeah, I love that perspective. Definitely. And I love that you said this because this is literally the way I answer that question, but I use 500 words versus 5 words.
I heard that and I latched onto it. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a great quote." Yeah,
It
I
is.
know it's a good one.
It is. This has been great. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing so much of your goodness with us. Obviously, we're getting a really good idea of who you are and what you do. We have a ton of people watching live right now. I would love for you to talk a little bit about your business. What exactly do you do? Who do you help? Who should be reaching out to you?
Okay, great. So I work with women that are in midlife. So that's usually anywhere from 35 on up. And the way that I work is I have private clients as well as a couple of different programs, and I have a bunch of stuff in between. But my big stuff is be your own soulmate, dream it, own it, have it. It's a lot about what we've talked about. And that's a 3-month system that's underneath the umbrella of Seasons of the Soul. And Seasons of the Soul is that larger 6-month program or system. I don't like to call it a program because it's really a system in to live your life. And um, and that system it's all under the umbrella of it's a system of self mastery. And so I really love working with women that are in that pivotal place with themselves where they know there's something more for them. And some of them even already know what it is. and they keep kind of like hitting that threshold. They keep hitting their growing edge and bouncing back, hitting their growing edge and bouncing back. And so I love to really help women get past that, because you can do that in such a way of ease. And so the pillars of Seasons of the Soul are to slow down, listen deeply, and connect within. And those are the women that I really know that I can help move towards their future and really start owning who they are authentically, taking off those layers so that they can have it. And having it is all about creating a new way of stacking the evidence of what they see in their life. Beautiful. Did I answer your question? I feel like I just rambled.
Okay. No, that was great. 100%. For those listening live or on the replay, if they wanted to connect with you, where's the best place to see more of you? Where do you hang out on social media, websites?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram under Josette Diaz, and I am also on Facebook, and my Facebook is actually I'm on LinkedIn, excuse me, under Josette Diaz as well. But I believe you have to find me on LinkedIn under Josette Diaz, because there's a few of us, which really surprised me. And I also have Be Your Own Soulmate on YouTube. So I can be found in those places. I hang out a lot on Instagram, and I dabble in Facebook. And I haven't really built my YouTube too much, but I'm there.
I love it. Very, very cool. Well, this has been wonderful. I took a whole page of notes. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing some goodness with us. One of the things that I love about podcasting is every once in a while, I run into somebody here who teaches me something. At this point, I've been podcasting for a really long time. And so I've heard so much. So I so appreciate it when I bump into somebody who's just like teaching me things I've never thought of before, word usage I've never heard of before. And it just lights up my day. It really allows me to be able to continue to grow and to continue to, expand on my personal growth journey. So this has been great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
I would want to just say that it might sound a little scary to step into unveiling yourself, because that's a little scary sometimes. And I just want all the women out there to know that it's worth the journey, because at the end of your life, you will have no regrets, because you took the chance to love yourself on such a deep level that will lead you to living your dreams, owning who you are, and allowing yourself to have something that you've always wanted, that you would love. That's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. To those listening, guidance to wellness.com. I was going to try to get through that without coughing, but it wasn't working.
Wasn't going to happen.
I did go the whole podcast, so that's nice.
Yeah, you did good.
Guidance to wellness.com, Josette Diaz. She predominantly hangs out on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
To those listening live, thank you for staying with us to the very end. Remember to follow, like, and share. As always,